I want us to become brothers again like we used to be, and for us to find ourselves and bond with each other. Can we agree to that?
Opinions vary.
Welcome to Three Brothers Filmcast. I'm Anton Bergstrom, and I'm here with my brothers,
Anders
and Aaron.
My last name is the same as my brother's.
And this month, we're going to the stars. We're talking about the spring's two biggest movies, Project Hail Mary and the Super Mario Galaxy movie. But first, thanks for listening. Can you do us a favor and share this episode with one family member or friend right now? And if you like our takes and banter on this podcast, why not subscribe to our new weekly Substack newsletter, Three Brothers Film Newsletter. Each issue offers a roundup of our latest content, flashbacks to older articles, and our famous last words section, where the brothers have a short conversation or answer questions. Soon we will be inviting subscribers to ask us questions, so do be sure to subscribe at threebrothersfilm.substack.com. But now, on with the show.
And here we go.
Project Hail Mary and the Super Mario Galaxy movie are, in my view, good examples of the strengths and weaknesses of contemporary Hollywood filmmaking. Now, don't get me wrong. I think both movies are successful at achieving what they set out to achieve. The Super Mario Galaxy movie is a fast-paced, reference-riddled animated journey around the Mario Galaxy that delivers on laughs, inventive adventure scenarios, and franchise character cameos. Project Hail Mary is obviously a different kind of film, a science fiction thriller with a somewhat complex narrative, character development, and real stakes. And I think it succeeds at bringing us on the last chance mission of Ryan Gosling's scientist Grace to save the sun. I like both these movies for what they are. That said, both films display a similarly breezy approach to their pop content, with all the clever quips and needle drops you'd expect. Both films aren't great at inhabiting one shot or moment for an extended period of time. The shots are sometimes gorgeous, but the editing is almost always brisk, except for the obligatory money shots, which you might assume were partly conceived to feature in the promotional trailers and linger in audiences' minds. There's something too slick about both movies, which is perhaps why it's so hard to not go along with them. Brothers, Project Hail Mary is the successful science-forward sci-fi movie, described as one of the must-see movies of 2026. It has a good performance by Ryan Gosling at the center, along with his alien companion Rocky, which is a memorable non-human character, which I found quite pleasant. But is anything in this movie actually new? At times it felt like the pieces of Interstellar and various other space exploration movies put together. Directors Phil Lord and Christopher Miller, best known for their work in animated films, Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs and the Lego Movie and the Spider-Verse movies. They're skillful assemblers of pop culture content, but they also seem to lack the calm and a sense of presence and attentiveness that, in my view, could have made this movie great. The narration is ambitious, but in my view, unclear. The film intercuts between the present on the spaceship and what happened on Earth before in a way that was never clear for me. Are these just memories or just an entwined narrative? Lacks the command of, say, a Christopher Nolan, which I admit is a tall order. At the same time, it's fun, warm, hits some emotional notes, and has some very cool and stunning space exploration moments that hit a chord with the Artemis II mission success, which was, going on in real life.
Okay, Ramblers, let's get rambling.
What do you think, Anders? Did you enjoy the movie?
I think I like the movie quite a bit. I think it's very good. I don't think it's great. I don't think it's like a complete all-timer, but it's very good. And I probably, based on what you're saying, I think I like the movie seems a little bit more than you did. I think that it is, I think a lot of the biggest thing about the movie is probably both its, in my mind, its biggest asset and probably the thing that also keeps it from being a little more is Ryan Gosling. I think his character is, he's very good at what he's doing, but he is doing the Ryan Gosling kind of like character, right? Like the kind of like, it's almost like, whether it's Ken or maybe when he's on SNL or these kind of things, right? Like it's a little bit leans into that, which is extremely fun. He's a fun guy. If you have to hang out in space for a long time with someone, I think that it's a good choice. And I think for a lot of people, it works a lot. Like if I was to contrast it to, we were just, talking about Andy Weir's that previous adaptation of Andy Weir's novel, The Martian, like Dr. Raylan Grace is like a little more like funny and a little less sure of himself and a little more of the sort of flawed character that people can connect with, who likes the jokes, likes the one liners and things like that, as opposed to Matt Damon's a little more serious. And I think some of that can come down to Lord and Miller versus Ridley Scott, right? But I think when the movie is at its best, I did find the visuals pretty good, and I probably didn't find the narration as unclear as you did. Like,
well, let's pick that up later. Let's get to Aaron's answer.
So overall, I like it quite a bit. Like, it's a solid thumbs up for me.
Aaron, did you come out positive?
Yeah,
Very positive.
I definitely liked it. I think it's an enjoyable movie. It's fun. It's I think it was in our last Substack when we were thinking about space exploration movies. It's not actually the widest field of a subgenre. Like, there's really not that many movies that are about space exploration. I think the Star Trek TV series is like kind of the definitive, but in terms of movies, there's not all that much. So I think it will stand out pretty well in the field, and obviously it's a huge hit. I'm famously a big fan of Ryan Gosling, especially back in the day. I was really, really into him. I still really like him. He's super enjoyable as a movie star on screen. He's really amiable. He has a kind of manic energy to him that is really appealing for a super handsome, charming guy. But he also, compared to a Matt Damon or a Brad Pitt or some of the other larger movie stars that you can make comparisons to, like with The Martian or Ad Astra, this movie seems really comfortable, and Gosling specifically in his performance seemed comfortable being not particularly macho, not particularly masculine. He's kind of sensitive. He's kind of touchy. He's very vulnerable. And I think that kind of does the thing that aligns with this movie for the target audience. It's that, like, people who love the feels and people who love science and just hitting the two. And those people often are kind of nerdy and kind of into goofy humor and puns and jokes, and the idea of like, the middle school teacher vibe, which Grace is a middle school teacher when we first meet him. Like, that sums up this movie. It's a middle school movie, so of course it could play gangbusters with a 12-year-old.
And he's the teacher who, everyone liked in middle school.
Yeah. Because he has a talent for it. Grace has a talent for it. But I would say the limitation there is that, unlike The Martian, I think this movie sometimes is not confident enough in like aspects of its exploration, of its larger purpose, or of the attention of the audience to go with something. So even this movie is essentially the same length as 2001: Space Odyssey. It's actually longer, a little bit longer, which is kind of crazy, but it's so much lighter in tone, and it's so much less confident in just like letting you drink in the majesty of a space moment than any of the other exploration movies.
I'll just say one thing, because I think I don't want my comment to be taken the wrong way. I think you hit on it, Aaron, which it is a lot of it is in the direction of the film and how Gosling is sort of written, because I know that Gosling can play more serious because he did so in another movie about space exploration, which is Damien Chazelle's First Man, right? Where he plays Neil Armstrong, and he still has the emotional stuff in that and all, but this is just very much plays into that kind of Lord and Miller humor, right? Lego movie. And I think, Anton, that's what you're getting at with like the frenetic. There's something a little bit frenetic at times about it, when I think the movie would have benefited, as you say, from slowing down and letting us actually, the humor and stuff might have hit stronger if we had felt the stakes a little more early. Yeah.
So there's two things I want to tackle based on what you guys said. I want to talk about themes, because I think there's some interesting comparisons to The Martian in terms of what this movie's about. But first, maybe let's tackle some of the formal aspects. Anders, you brought up, this frenetic pacing, right? Lord and Miller, all of their movies have frenetic pacing. I, for one, found that this movie then, it was almost hard to get into the initial premise. And I got more into this movie as it went on, because the whole sort of he wakes up and he has amnesia. They couldn't even take the time to sort of like let us really feel how kind of terrifying that would be.
Yeah.
Because the shots are coming so fast and quick, and already then it moves on. Like there's certain things that I felt like I don't want to belittle them because I think like Lord and Miller have a lot of talent.
They do.
But like more serious filmmakers would spend more time on certain things. And I think that, him grappling with amnesia on a spaceship alone is something you'd want to deal with in a serious way for a period of time because it's such a terrifying premise.
Yeah.
And it sort of passes over that. Or, another example would be him learning to communicate with Rocky, with the alien.
It's breezed over way too quickly.
It's kind of breezed over like they can do it, where a movie like Arrival spends basically the entire movie trying to figure out whether we can communicate through language with another species. So there's that sort of breeziness to it.
Which is also, I think, why people like it though, right?
But it makes it so easy to take in, right?
Well, I'm going to let you get back to the comment there, Anton, but I'm just curious about your thoughts on the eulogy scene where he's still discovering things on the ship and he decides to send a burial at sea essentially for the two dead astronauts, and that he's only figured out things through the photographs and through sparse information there. I think that is probably the example of Lord and Miller actually understanding how to balance the tone and take a step back the best. I kind of wish we had a little bit more of that in some of the other scenes in the movie, but I think they're capable of it because that sequence is actually really deft and it's like touching, but it's still funny. He makes jokes. And it's better later when we meet the crew members and as his memories come back and we meet them in the flashback. Sure, but that sequence is like a true funeral eulogy of like the uncertainty is part of the experience of a eulogy and the humor allows you to get through something that's so uncomfortable. So like the tone makes a lot of sense there.
But I think it's also because their formal approach works well with what's going on there because he's gathered knowledge about these people in pieces. And so their interest in rapid cuts, sometimes sort of montaging through things, plays really well into sort of him discovering from pieces, a small sense of their life in order to say something. And whereas that exact same approach to me doesn't work as well when it's someone sort of waking up trying to figure out like, where am I? Because initially I was like, I don't even have like a feel for this ship. And I feel like everything kind of slows down a bit more once we get to, the alien encounter, which sort of forms the actual core of the film.
Yeah. Can just on that thought, like of the setup, Ridley Scott made The Martian, but he's also more famous for doing the Alien movies, and he made Prometheus, the controversial 2012 prequel to Alien, right? Yeah. The opening to Prometheus is actually a great example of setting up geography and tone because it's just following Michael Fassbender's David wandering around the ship. And you get this sense of like, he eases you into it and then he, awakens them from their cryo. But before that, without really spending any time on exposition or other things, the movie completely sets you in formally, tonally, visually, and kind of performatively through Fassbender's iciness to what the approach of the whole movie is going to be. And now that's not really the taste of nowadays. Nowadays is much more about freneticness. And to be fair, Grace has amnesia when he wakes up, so maybe we want to be as disoriented as him. Maybe that's the approach, right? But I just think it's an interesting change of like, Scott has a much more of that kind of almost master filmmaker of like, I'm going to set you up conventionally, and it actually is like, it's invisible, and this movie doesn't, it kind of leans into the confusion of the form.
Maybe I'll put this to Anders because you know more about film history to me, but I almost think that Lord and Miller really embody how sort of the smartphone, short video, what we're used to, sort of as how it gets sort of built into how we sort of then approach and make movies. And so when you're approaching everything as just a series of short video snippets they're not really about a replication of reality because we already kind of exist in this sort of just short video world that we share images with each other online. Whereas like that, there's a different way of doing your approach to like mise en scène and slowing down the image and trying to sort of replicate what reality feels like. And I sometimes just feel like Lord and Miller, like their interest on a film isn't to duplicate what real life feels like. It's almost just living in the image world that we've built.
Well, I think that's clear in this film because so much of the movie is actually Dr. Grace like talking to screens, right? And recording.
Yeah.
And it brings some
They use
fun.
a lot of different images, right? Like from the video recorder.
And he's creating these diaries because he's alone. And then, he leads some funny bits later, like when Rocky's like, who are you talking to? Who are you talking to? Because at first
that was
Rocky
really
also
funny. I really
he can't see because his senses are based on echolocation. He has to figure out a way to read like computer screens and stuff like that. But
you get a little odd couple moment, which I sort of appreciate.
It's fun. But so yeah, the one thing I like is that if they're going to go that approach, they sort of build that into the structure of the film in a way, right?
Yeah.
Like, so it's not completely forced on it. It actually, it works pretty well.
Yeah.
But I actually for me, what I actually wanted was more of, like, I understand that the novel is written the same way, right? So he wakes up on the ship, and then the novel, it cuts back and forth chapter by chapter. It fills in the background as his memories come back to him. And it's an interesting way that you can do that. But I actually liked the Earth stuff. I wanted more of the Earth stuff. I really like Sandra Hüller in this film. I like because especially also in terms of science, like you said, science forward film, right? Some people have called this rather than a science fiction film because it's not really hard sci-fi, right? But it is very much in showcasing, how people go through processes of discovery and try to do things, even if it's not super realistic all the time. But I liked the bits a lot on, like, when they're figuring out the astrophage and him and Lionel Boyce's character are, building the stuff. And I actually thought that stuff worked pretty well.
Mm-hmm. So moving from, say, some of the formal techniques we're seeing to sort of the overall governing formal strategy, I want to put my question to you is, what kind of like a movie is this? Like, is this a memory film? Like, in the sense of we have a present time and he's remembering these things? Are these two simultaneous tracks running together that have no like conscious connection between the two? Because this is what I meant by being unclear on it. The way they do some of the cuts between it sometimes seems to suggest that, like, he is like experiencing some reaction to what we just watched in terms of the past part. But at the same time, like, it's like, what's the extent of his amnesia? Has he gotten over it? Does he remember anything? That aspect of the movie to me was unclear in a way that a complex narrative could be told by someone like Nolan, where once we understand the rules that he's laid out, it becomes clear of how this movie's operating. I just felt like I wasn't clear on we don't arrive at a point where I'm like, oh, so everything we've seen is like him remembering, or it's just two tracks. I don't actually know at the end.
I find it funny that you mentioned Nolan again, because what I kept thinking about after seeing this film, and I mean, maybe people are thinking I'm more negative on this movie than I am. I actually did very much enjoy this movie, but it reminds me of almost somebody watching Memento and taking the central. So Memento famously has a Mobius narrative. Where you think it's two parallel tracks, but actually at one point the one bends back on the other. And so you realize that the experience of the one narrative, which is the black and white, is the moving forward, and the actual other version is that you've been experiencing reverse chronology, the color sequences. But he has the color and the black and white for this formal clarity, and it breaks it, and it uses it as a mystery. There's something that formally you don't know how this all syncs up, but you will discover it by watching the movie. This movie, you don't really discover it. It's like taking Memento and snipping that central section where they bend back and flipping the reverse chronology so it's straight. So it's two things where you think that you're going to come to some aha moment where he's now recovered his memories, but he doesn't actually do that. It just kind of happens.
But is that because it's like it's funny because it makes me think it's like retrograde amnesia versus anterograde amnesia, where like it's like, and he has to heal so he can remember what happened before a certain state, but he is able to make new memories.
A condition?
It's my memory.
Amnesia?
No. It's different from that. I have no short-term memory. I know who I am. I know all about myself. Since my injury, I can't make new memories. Everything fades.
You're right, Anton. I agree. It lacks the formal clarity. That might be, frankly, a high standard. Like, I would go so far as to say that, like, Memento might be the like one of the greatest narrative structures of any film of all time. Like that's
Yeah.
its
Yes,
thing,
and I admit
right?
that not everyone can do that.
Yeah.
With the same clarity that Nolan. Like that's one of his top
I think
skills.
that the film gets by because, as you said, it relies on, there isn't necessarily it's not 100% clear what the relationship between the sort of present space mission and the flashback sequence is. It's sort of implied that he's remembering, and the implication comes about because, as you said, there are moments where he sort of says things that sort of connect to the events that we see in the flashbacks. But it's more of an emotional connection, and I think a lot of movies classically do that. Like I always remember thinking about in Casablanca when Rick has his first flashback to Paris kind of thing.
Yeah.
Is that
actually what he's
remembering, kind of thing, or not? Doesn't really matter, right? It fills us in with the information we need, and this is kind of the level that it's operating on. And that to me is the praise that I have for this movie, is that in this day and age, despite all its jokiness and these things, it does still feel like a real movie and in a way that a lot of recent popular movies don't. So
This movie being a success,
that's what I like about
a
it.
good thing.
So I think the answer of why it's structured the way it is it's twofold. One is that I think one of the most popular structures within science fiction filmmaking in the last 20 years, both television and movies, but probably more television, is the thing pioneered by Lost, which is essentially introduce the characters, introduce a fantastical scenario. Why are they here? And then you flash it back to allow you to understand the emotional motivation that underhinges all the critical decisions that they're making in the moment in front of you. It just doesn't have something as subtle and kind of corny as the whoosh sound that gives you the flashback and flash out in Lost. It's very similar with this.
Did Drew Goddard also write on Lost?
Yes, he did.
There you go. So he wrote the screenplay for this movie. So.
Yes. But that's the J.J. Abrams, Damon Lindelof approach, right? Like that's their thing. And, people always put Abrams, remember, Abrams created the show. He directed the exceptional pilot, maybe like the best pilot of a TV show ever. But he was not very involved with the rest of the show. It was Lindelof and Carlton Cuse. But the other analog is The Martian. And I think it's easy to overstate how much this movie takes much of what people loved about The Martian and cranks it up. So it's like, what do people love about The Martian? They love the scene where Matt Damon's like, I'm going to have to science the shit out of this. I'm going to grow potatoes. I'm going to have to do this. I'm going to do the slingshot. And then there's the parallel whole narrative in The Martian of Jessica Chastain and the rest of the crew back on Earth, figuring out a way that they can, or the rest of the crew that is away from him, not on Mars, realizing how do we save him. And then you got Donald Glover figuring out the slingshot theory of they're going to go around the sun and go back to like speed up because of the fuel and things like that, right? But it has that parallel structure. But this movie doesn't have that because you don't have a rescue mission. He is his own rescue mission, and starting to get his memories back will allow him the skills and the knowledge necessary to rescue Earth and get home, right? That's the implication. So it's in a sense this movie, and based off a novel and stuff, but it's very much a spiritual sequel to The Martian. It takes the same narrative structure, the same approach, and the elements that were really good about that last one and dials them up for a more crowd pleasing approach. Because The Martian is a huge crowd pleaser, but this movie's makes you burst out laughing.
and just to make clear for anyone listening who is unclear, it's based on novels by the same person. So I would also say that thematically, this movie is in dialogue with The Martian. So I think that this movie, in some sense, there's aspects of Matt Damon's character in The Martian that this movie tries to take a different approach to what a scientist and a human can be and do to excel. Because if The Martian is all about it's one of these movies. The Martian's a movie that loves human competence. And just let's just explore and adore what a person put to the task can do. this movie, that's not like, it's a part of it, but the whole point throughout is that, you know, Grace doesn't want to be there.
Exactly. That's the key scene. In the
he never
flashback,
wanted to be in this point. In that, everything's driving to the point where it's like, you know, we discover that he was drugged and placed on this mission. Like he's an
Against his will,
involuntary, he's an involuntary person. He has capability, but he doesn't really work well with other people. And then the whole movie's theme is really like, basically that, you know, we work better with other people or other things. Like that's kind of the message of this movie. It's like,
that's why he's so fortunate that he meets Rocky, because.
And to me, one of the great novelties in this, you know, I'm sure it's been done in other sci-fi, but I can't think of many sci-fi movies that, you know, Star Trek does this, I'll admit. But what I mean is like these sorts of movies where it's like this idea that like we have to save Earth, we have to save the sun. And there's other people doing the same thing. There's another aliens who have to also do the same thing. And guess what? If we just kind of work together on this, we'd do it better. Like
might each help each other.
Yeah. There's like it's basically just like a team cooperation sort of theme.
We even
like you tell your students in middle
stuff,
school that like, you know, we can science better if we work together.
That's sort of, to me, is one of the like sort of like optimistic things about the movie, right? It even has like the crew is like a Russian, a Chinese, and an American. There's, you know, people from, it seems like all kinds of countries working together on Earth to like put this crew together, all run by a German.
But the movie nicely points out at different times. Like I actually thought that the stuff back on Earth had a nice combination of a optimism in humanity without being naive. Because there's plenty of times where they have a conversation about like, where do you think this is going to go? The countries aren't going to keep working together.
No.
You know, things like that. Which I thought
might, but not everybody's going to. Yeah.
I just thought some of those touches were really useful, that it didn't feel fake, this human-like cooperation.
No, totally. That's why Sandra Hüller's character is so important.
Yeah.
Exactly. She allows that dose of cold, hard reality without puncturing the kind of bubble that Gosling's character has, and that you need to be drawn into to think that this mission can succeed, and all these elements, right? That you believe in the Hail Mary. That was the tagline.
Right. Because my other thing about the whole, like, so basically she's the one who's like, after an accident, he's the only one left with the knowledge to be able to run this mission, and he doesn't want to do it, and she is like, you have to do it. Like, we're not going to, and you don't have a choice, right? And imagine there's some people who would be like almost see her as a villain, almost like, right? In that, like, she's the one who drugged him and put him on this ship to potentially die alone in space, right? As far as they're concerned, he is going to. And I think one of the tests of the movie is like to ask you like where you stand with all of it is like, did she do the right thing? I'm like, I think she did. She 100% did the right thing, right?
She did, because but you also,
because it also
learns,
go ahead. Yeah,
I was just gonna say the great like part. I think that the film, I agree that I think some people could watch this and be like, you know, that was sort of a terrible thing to do. But I think the film balances that view of sort of a cold, calculated view of human sacrifice with then in the other narrative, the heartfelt sort of brotherly love version of self-sacrifice. Because it's interesting that our hero, who we discover right near the end of the movie, wasn't actually a hero, or, you know, in that moment, initially, didn't want to sacrifice himself for all of humanity, was forced into it. But then he does say, you know what? I'll sacrifice my ability to get home by going
to help my friend.
My friend. So it's like a lesson he learns.
Yeah.
Right.
And, you know, and so again, I think it works. I actually,
and I think it works too. And I would say in the end, the reason it works is also like, for me, why I think you can say emotionally that she did the right thing is because it wasn't just as you said, a cold calculation. It was actually an expression of her belief in him that he could rise.
You're right. She says
She's
it a couple of times.
She's like, it's like he sells himself short.
Yeah.
Right. And she's like, no, I think you can do this. And I'm going to actually push you. Maybe because the stakes are so high.
Human potential of like, you guys actually can do this. We can actually be better.
But it goes even deeper in terms of character construction and motivation, right? It circles around constantly this notion of Grace has to be brave. He's not brave, but he has to be brave. And that's how things well, this mission will succeed. He has to be able to spacewalk. He has to be able to fly the ship. He has to be able to do the big, fishing for the amoebas, the Tau amoeba.
Space amoebas.
Tau Ceti. Which Tau Ceti shows up in a lot of sci-fi, which I love that because it's pretty close to us. But anyways, so it sets all that up, right? And very classic, and this is why it's a real movie, because it has real character construction that pays off in various threads. But so she believes in him, but it's not such a clear thing of her sending him just as a pragmatic choice if they have to do it for the mission to succeed, but also not just this kind of like, you will rise to the occasion. It's actually that even if she might not consciously understand it, she realizes that a man like him with his unique disposition and approach to things is actually a value, that you don't need to be conventionally brave in the way that you think that an individual does. You can be like Grace and have this humor and this spontaneity and this ability to flip situations on their head to get through it, which actually is essential for him becoming best friends with Rocky and having that collaboration, which then ends up saving the day. Because there's the question here that is kind of in the movie never really hits on the head, and I like this, but it's like, if those original scientists had gone, would they have actually done the mission? The answer is no, because they would never met Rocky and never would have made that bond with him and figured out the way to communicate through humor and through other elements if it wasn't him his whole approach is like, actually, might not be super suited to flying the spaceship, but I'm really suited to becoming friends with Rocky and communicating with him because I'm a teacher.
So those are great points, Aaron. And I think they also show that this movie is in dialogue with another Matt Damon science fiction movie. I mean, Matt Damon's not the main character in it, but Interstellar. And I see how, Dr. Mann, Matt Damon's character in that is the exact opposite, right, of Ryan Gosling's Grace here, right? He's like the superhero guy we've selected.
The best of us.
To be a total, scuzzbag who only cares about himself. He's like, I'm actually weak. I'm sorry. We can sort of understand some of his aspects, but whereas Grace, who seems like he couldn't do it, couldn't cut it, manages to. Maybe to sort of wrap things up, I'm sort of curious about, how do you see this movie? There are aspects of this movie, that are very similar to Interstellar or some of the other recent sci-fi works. And I'm just curious, other than The Martian, what you see going on here.
Well, I will say the two, so the Interstellar is obviously one of the big ones, connections. The other movie that it reminds me the most of it's not a sci-fi movie, it's a survival movie. It's Castaway.
Yeah. I was actually thinking of
Wilson and Rocky, but it's like if Wilson could talk back.
Yeah.
And I have to say that James Ortiz, who's just the puppeteer who did Rocky, and then he ended up doing the voice on set. So just to give you a little bit of behind the scenes, is that Gosling was not acting by himself on the set.
Right.
And it was actual sets. They built real sets. They had lots and lots of practical effects in this movie because they thought it was important for the science forward approach. You need to actually show the things that you can do, like actual models for the ships, things like that.
Actual duct tape.
Lots of duct tape in this movie. Scientists love duct tape, as we know from The Martian. So James Ortiz was operating this puppet on set with Ryan Gosling so he could understand and interact, and there's an actual true reactiveness of the performance. But he was doing the voice, and then eventually they were going to get somebody else to do the voice, an actual actor. He's not an actor, he's a puppeteer. But they gave him a chance to do the voice, and then they put it through all this kind of filter, and he comes up with his own weird kind of juddery. It reminds me of the Tars voice performance from Interstellar, but it's also got a few mannerisms of, there's a little bit of like Katharine Hepburn and like old 1930s like stuff in there. There is. He speaks in kind of stilted, like little quick things, hey, what's going on, Grace? We're going to do this. We're going to do that.
And because this is also, Robinson Crusoe.
Yep.
Then
His Girl Friday.
His Girl Friday.
Yes. So there's a little bit of screwball and there's a lot of references in the way that even just he chooses the voice. If they go through the different voices, he doesn't like this, he doesn't like that. He likes this one. I like that one. We're going to go with this. And it's just, I think it's really impressive that this guy, who's the puppeteer, in a way gives us as central a performance in this movie as Gosling, the big movie star. Yeah. And the movie would not work nearly as well if it wasn't for his full physical and vocal performance.
It's a risk because Rocky does, and Grace comments on it at one point, he doesn't have a face.
No.
Yeah.
Right. So because he's kind of a rock creature that communicates via like movements and things like that. It's like, that's a big risk to make one of your central characters like that. Like
I kind of love Rocky actually though. Like I
if there
really
had been,
like Rocky.
I can imagine a different version, people like pushing to like, okay, it's okay if Andy Weir wrote it that way in the book, but for the film we have to have a face, right? Like or something like that. So I'm glad that they didn't, and that they rose to the occasion of doing that.
Yeah. And sort
you guys
of
are making me
awkward
think.
humor
No, I do like
not
this movie.
understanding like jokes and
I think it is a good film. It probably could have been a little shorter.
Oh my goodness, please.
But that's a common complaint.
But there's a weird.
Movies.
It's a combination of like it could be shorter and slower at the same time. And it's hard to describe at times. Overall, like I like the movie. I'm glad it's hitting with audiences.
Yeah.
I just think some of the things we've talked about do embody aspects of it seems still trapped a bit within the confines of what Hollywood seems to be into these days.
So I met an alien. He's kind of growing on me. At least he's not growing in me, which was a concern for a little while.
Totally.
Brothers, let's end off with Super Mario Galaxy, which is what I'm going to call it for simplicity's sake. After seeing it with both you and the kids over the Easter opening weekend, I went and tracked down the old Super Mario Brothers movie from 1993, featuring Bob Hoskins, John Leguizamo, and Dennis Hopper. It's terrible, bizarrely conceived, hideously executed. But it reminded me how today we might take well-made franchise movies for granted. As much as we've complained about Marvel movies on this podcast, there's like a quality assurance to the product that earlier decades it did not have for these sorts of movies. And I'd say the same about the two Mario movies. At the same time, the approach does seem to stifle actual creativity. Okay, Aaron, in your review, you went so far as to question whether we should consider the Super Mario Galaxy movie as actually a movie. But before we debate that premise, can you clarify what you mean by that and how that relates to your enjoyment of the movie?
Movie is maybe not the correct way I should have framed it. Maybe I should have said it's not art. And at the end of the day, the Super Mario Galaxy movie is shiny and enjoyable and fun and referential and colorful. It hits the notes. It doesn't do anything that makes me think that this is not Mario of the video games that I like quite a bit. I've played since I was a child, that I really have a lot of affection for. The references, this, that, and the other. It plays in this world to delight in the audience's love of the world. But is there actually anything when you strip away the endless signifiers to something you already like? And my answer is no. It's kind of like if one of those planets that Mario and Luigi show up on in this movie has nothing in its core. It's empty.
It's to go use Baudrillardian terminology, it's a simulacrum. It's a signifier sort of signified. It has no... It's lost the reference. We're just like an endless play of like...
Which is especially
references.
kind of funny with a movie based on a video game. But it's like, well, we can't control the character. So what are we getting here? This is I like this movie as much as I like the first one. I gave the first one a mildly positive review on the podcast 3 years ago when we covered it. I don't think it's any worse or better really than the first one. And this one I kind of give a middle of the road review rating. And it just comes down to like, I liked it. Is there anything there? Probably not. Like, I don't know. Is like,
yeah.
Because
Anders, you go, and then I'm going to give my take.
I might be even be a little more negative in that I frankly found myself slightly bored at times in the movie. Like you guys kept saying that it's like, entertaining and funny. I'm like, is it really actually? Like, there's like pleasant things about it. It's not like hideous. It's not like, it lacks that. Like, I have not seen the entire 1993 Mario, but there's a part of me that wants to watch it just for, as you said, it being so hideous. Although Bob Hoskins famously said it was the worst thing he was ever involved in. He regrets the entire thing. But with Super Mario Galaxy, I'm like, just to go on what you said, Anton, about like there's a quality assurance, but what quality is being assured here? What the quality that's being assured is that, one, it looks like and reminds you really well of all the things you like about the video games, right? But that quality assurance, as you say it stifles creativity. You don't want to do anything that's going to potentially bother a fan in any kind of way, right? And I think this is the Marvel is instructive. And to go back to our constant, as the kids would say, glazing of Christopher Nolan all the time here. Like like his Batman movie is great because he didn't do that, because he actually was willing to like potentially piss off fans, right? Like, why is his Bane so memorable? Because he took the essence of what Bane was and did something kind of totally different with it, right? Like things like that. Like this movie is not doing that. And there's a part of me that also, even in all its referentiality, it's so beholden to like, even more so ironically than Project Hail Mary with it's like sort of jokes and, you know, music, needle drops and stuff like that. Like there's something almost cowardly about it. Someone, I forget, some read this somewhere. It's not an original thought to me, but like couldn't even have Chris Pratt say, "It's a Mario," like once, right? Like,
"It's me, Mario."
They kind of like the very fact that they had to have Chris Pratt be Mario is itself like a sign of like the kind of quality, right? The quality you're being assured of here is that we've paid a lot of money to get one of the biggest stars in Hollywood to play every character here. But we're a little bit embarrassed of some of even the things here, but we're nonetheless going to give you all the references and signifiers of Mario. And so to me, it's like, it did feel very empty. Like, I don't think it's terrible. I don't think anyone's like, it didn't make me angry when I watch it. I'm just like, I'll probably never watch it again because like, I'd much rather just go play the video game.
Okay. So I would say I probably have the most positive take on this movie. I think the quality assurance, it's akin to a Big Mac. You want a Big Mac to be made like the Big Mac you expect. And if it delivers that, there's a satisfaction there. And, you know, and so I understand that's a low expectation. It's not art food, right? Like, you know what I mean? Like there's not something beyond, but the fact that it actually sort of hits that. But setting that aside, I'd also say, I'm trying to think about what kind of a movie is Super Mario Galaxy. Because I think, Aaron, your review really got me thinking about, you know, when you say this wasn't a movie, and I know you've qualified that here and elaborated, but I think it's also the expectation of movie as narrative, as telling a story. And I think we all agree that Project Hail Mary tells a good story that we're invested in. And I don't think Super Mario Galaxy does that. But I'm trying to think, why is it that I like Super Mario Galaxy better than the first one? I went back and I was listening to our podcast on the first one. And you know, one of the things that really rubbed me wrong about the first one, although I still kind of liked the first one, was that I didn't like all the need to have the Mario brothers in the real world and give some sort of backstory and justification. And then this movie is just the Mario world. It's largely freed from almost any constraints of sort of character development. We get a few handful, like teaspoons added in about, you know, maybe Peach's past, maybe Bowser and his child, but they're very minimal. And it just plays with the world. And so what I was arriving at is that this movie is made by Illumination. And I actually saw the Minions movie and I liked it. And I liked it because I was like, this isn't just an animated movie. This is actually a cartoon. And I think that the Super Mario Galaxy movie is a cartoon. And I think it works as a cartoon. And I think we should think of it the way we think of like Looney Tunes and things like that. Which people will be like, well, it's not about telling a story. It's not about, like, think about cartoon. What's it about? Comedy? It's about something visually inventive and enticing and interesting. And I think the Mario movie actually delivers on those things. I think the Galaxy does it better than the first one. I don't think this movie is great. I'm not going to like go to the trenches to say this is truly, you know, one of the great cartoons out there. But what I mean is I actually think that we've gotten to a point where, you know what, I'm kind of bored. You know, I saw In and Out 2 last year and it was good. It was good. And it was so, just sort of emotional in just the right way.
Yeah.
And guess what? Emotion in animated movies is now the convention. And we don't get a lot of cartoons out there. And so I kind of like that Mario's just like, let's just play around. Let's have guys running around on the four walls of the casino, like those sorts of
That's
things.
the best scene in the movie. But don't you think that like it has even already too much of that like emotion, like the Rosalina Peach stuff and all that?
I would still scale
I knew
it back
from the very
even more.
beginning that it would be like the power of the sisters that would like beat the thing, and stuff like that.
Oh yeah, for sure.
I think it goes too far into that. But I like it's, I think you're getting into something with your idea of it being a cartoon. But my biggest problem is like, I don't think it's super funny. There's not a lot of like humor that hits. Compare with like the Warner Brothers cartoons and the Looney Tunes, which I love. And two, the visual inventiveness is somewhat stifled by giving us things that we've seen in the games, I think, to some degree, right? It's interesting. I would say, again, I was surprised, like Letterboxd in their social media just recently had fans, like people polling like the best video game adaptations, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the Super Mario movie, the first one won, was the highest rated like video game adaptation. But the number two, and I was like, oh, to me, a movie that a lot of people would probably maybe don't like, but I actually thought was interesting and inventive, was Detective Pikachu, the Pokemon movie, which does something to me like really kind of weird and surprising with the video game franchise. I know that it's not perfect, but like I think there's something interesting there in the way it does it, and it has the gags and stuff, and it has Ryan Reynolds as the voice and stuff like that. So it still is just treading into that Chris Pratt territory that I criticized. But I'm just I take your point about it being a cartoon. I'm like, but is it a really funny or great cartoon? I don't know.
I don't know if it's a great, like, I'm not really saying that, but I think that, the Super Mario Brothers movie from 1993 is a great example of like, let's do a strange out there adaptation that completely fails. That's horrible. That Bowser, or King Koopa as they call him, is just a guy. It's just Reptoids. Like the movie's so bad, but it's original. It's trying something different. So like, it's a good example of you can do an adaptation that's trying to do something different that fails completely. Yeah. Now I also would say that like different kind of failure. I agree. So it's not necessarily about that you have to do something different. Sometimes that is useful. Yeah. But I also think that there's like the Mario world doesn't have much substance to it. There's nothing really there. This is why I'm curious about what Nintendo Studios does with, say, a Link movie, a Zelda movie, because you're like, the Zelda is known for these like kind of deep, affecting stories. And so what are you going to do? You have to tell that story differently. Whereas Mario is just like, it is kind of stupid and silly. And it's Bowser in like, a tuxedo. And like, it's always kind of been that way. And so I'm not sure how you make a movie. And I feel like, I guess one of my takeaways is just that the more they stop trying to make this like a conventional animated movie, the more the movie was working for me. I still would not give this a hard, like, this is probably at like it's a 6 or 7 out of 10 for me. I'm just saying, I think Illumination Studios is the best right now at doing. Actually, well, I don't like their Dr. Zeus stuff. Yeah, because those ones always trying to have a theme. But their Minion stuff, I like that it's just like, let's just run characters around and they can beat each other up and stuff.
Yeah. Why do we play Mario? It's partly just like solving the levels, right? Like and figuring out the patterns and things like that. So like when they're going, is it like when Peach and Mario are going through, and then like it unlocks like the fire wheels and stuff like that. I actually kind of liked that because people have like always said those fire wheels are like the hardest levels, especially in their old like 2D side scroller ones, like trying to navigate those. So like that's the kind of stuff that's kind of fun, but can it sustain itself for very long? That's the challenge with these, I think.
Mm-hmm. Maybe this isn't the ideal setting. I would also say like stretching a cartoon to feature length in order to put it in IMAX theaters is not actually how we should be approaching this. We should just have a TV show on Netflix or something
That's
the Mario show.
basically what I was going to say, is that I actually agree that the Super Mario Galaxy movie, even more than Mario Bros movie, is a cartoon, and that they embody a lot of that same approach to entertainment. But even the Looney Tunes have only had a couple moderately successful feature-length films, and they are the most brilliant cartoons ever made. And yet, you somehow get it more than 7 minutes. It's like, okay, are we in the wrong format for this? And so that's the kind of thing where, especially with some of the more recent Mario games, where the humor is extreme. Like a game like Super Mario Odyssey is hilarious at points. Like it's the one that has Bowser at the wedding on the moon in the tuxedo and all and it's got Cappy, which is like a hilarious little
Cappy, we love Cappy.
figure, and it's really funny, but it's also a game that you can play. That is the reason for being. And that's my ultimate thing here. I guess it was like I had a very enjoyable time watching the Super Mario Galaxy movie. And then when I sat down to write a review, I'm like, I want to get some of these thoughts down because I think there is some like weirdly dense referential stuff going on here. And I think the classic cinephile approach of like, I'm just going to shit on this movie because it's for kids. And it's like, so you don't like Mario? Like, are you actually telling me you just straight up don't like if you don't like Mario, that's fine. But if you own a Nintendo Switch, you should probably admit that like you enjoy the visuals and you like seeing these characters, and there are pleasant elements, and that the people who are enjoying this, who are almost entirely children, are not rubes for engaging with it in a really pleasant, emotional manner, even if there's no actual emotion in the end thing. So I don't want to have that, but it is that kind of, I sat there and I was like, I had a really pleasant experience. Pleasant's the way to say it, but it is so empty. Like it's empty. It's genuinely empty. There's nothing there.
I'm wondering if maybe as the last comment is just that Super Mario Brothers Wonder for the Switch is an interesting example of then bringing the cartoon into the video game world, where there's a whole scene, or not scene. My boys were playing it, and there's a level, and all of a sudden these like the flowers that bite you just start like breaking into like this weird song in the background, and it's like a silly symphony, and you're like. So maybe we're actually trying to work things in the wrong direction.
Oh, it's actually funny you say that just on the video game thing, because there's a very popular indie video game in like 2016-17 called Cuphead. Notoriously insanely difficult. Like I've never beaten it. It's so hard. And it goes back to Flesher studio style animation created with actual old animation technology.
Interesting.
But for a video game where it's all boss battles, so you have to like fight the genie character and you have to fight the like giant bullet guy and stuff, but it's incredibly difficult. They made a TV show on Netflix, 2 seasons so far, of Cuphead, where the same studio that made the game, because they did all this animation work, actually made it, and you get Cuphead and Mugman trying to get the souls back from the devil, and that's the plot. But I'm like, you've now transformed something that is honestly so appealing and elemental in these tiny snippets that you get in the opening of the game. You put it to a 20-minute episode, and I'm like, no, you lost me. I try to watch some episodes, and it just does not hit. It doesn't
It's actually
work.
quite deranged and dark.
It is really dark. Because it's literally trying to get his soul from the devil. He sells out all his friends, and then the devil comes for his soul, and then he's like, okay, I guess I'm going to fight the devil. So in the game, if you get to the end, you fight the devil.
Well, Cuphead and his pal Mugman, they like to roll the dice. By chance they came upon a devil's game, and gosh, they paid the price. Paid the price.
But he's literally a guy with a cup head, and his buddy's a mug, so he's round and his buddy's square. But the reason I bring that up is that it's one of those things where video games themselves are so referential and aesthetic, right? Like they succeed so much more than even just a movie on like the atmosphere and the visual language and tone of how it presents itself, because it creates all that through implication because you're busy playing it. And it's why I get annoyed when people talk about video games as cinematic as a positive quality necessarily. I'm like, I'm pretty sure being fun to play is the key, actually. Not whether it's like watching a movie. However much I love Red Dead Redemption 2, which is a genuinely great cinematic game. But sometimes things don't need to transform into a different form. Sometimes the form that they're in is so perfect for it that actually you will only ever degrade it by changing it.
Yeah.
So
I kind of feel like an example of that would be like Kojima and like Metal Gear Solid. Like, it's people have talked about it being cinematic, like the voices and the like cutscenes and all that stuff, and it's very plot heavy, right? Like
It's like an
there's
anime,
long
yeah.
stretches of the game
Yeah.
where you're, but it is also fundamentally goofy at times. Like it's very like silly, and I don't know it would work outside of the context of the video game in that way. So, yeah, I think you raise a good point.
So I think, the Super Mario Brothers movie, the Super Mario Galaxy movie, Minecraft, these have been huge hits. They've shown that you can sort of be visually, especially the Mario movies, visually almost identical to the games, and that can work in a cinematic world. But I think what we're all arriving at is that we still haven't figured out how do you capture, or if it's even possible, capture the feel and the play of a video game. And there probably might be something almost irreconcilable between them, right? Like, because we don't go to video games to be movies, and we don't go to movies to be video games. Well, we've talked about some of the big hits of spring. We hope that you'll check us out on Substack and subscribe there. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you next time.
Goodbye, Mr. Bond.
I bid you farewell.